The void stretched, a tapestry of infinite black velvet studded with diamond dust stars. Aboard the human exploration vessel Wayfinder, Captain Alara Vance felt the familiar thrum of the ion drives beneath her feet, a comforting counterpoint to the quiet hum of the bridge. They were deep in the Perseus arm, further than any human vessel had ventured before, pushing the boundaries of the known cosmos. "Captain, I'm picking up something," reported Ensign Zola, her voice a measured blend of curiosity and professional calm. "A localized energy signature. High frequency, incredibly dense. It's unlike anything we've logged." Alara's gaze snapped to the main view screen, where Zola's preliminary readings shimmered in emerald green. "Put it on visual, Ensign." The stars shifted and then it emerged, a colossal structure not built of metal or rock but of intricate shimmering crystal. It was vast, dwarfing their own ship, an architectural marvel orbiting a barren gas giant whose turbulent amber clouds swirled endlessly below. The crystalline edifice, which Alara immediately christened the Ethelgard in her mind, pulsed with a complex, rhythmic energy that resonated through the Wayfinder's hull. "No discernible life signs, Captain." "First," Officer Jax Cale interjected, his broad shoulders tensed slightly as he peered at his own console. Jax, ever the pragmatist, was already running threat assessments. Passive scans indicate internal conduits, energy flow, but no organic signatures matching known biological profiles. Dr. Eris Thorne, the Wayfinder's xenolinguist, leaned forward, eyes gleaming with an almost childlike wonder. "Captain, the energy pulses, they're structured, there's a pattern, a cadence. It's too complex to be natural." Alara chewed on her lip, her mind racing. "An ancient artifact? A generational ship?" The possibilities spun like a galaxy. "Recommendations?" she finally asked, her gaze sweeping across her senior crew. "Proceed with extreme caution," Jax advised, "immediately. Maintain maximum shield integrity. This could be a trap, or worse, a graveyard of something immensely powerful." Eris, however, was already advocating for a different approach. "Captain, this is an unparalleled opportunity. A structure of this magnitude, an energy signature so profound. It's evidence of a truly advanced civilization. We must investigate." Alara considered both viewpoints. Her primary directive was exploration, but survival was paramount. "Compromise," she decided. "We deploy the Manta. Limited crew, passive scans only. No direct physical contact unless I give the explicit order. Jax, you prep the Manta's crew. Eris, you're with them. Get me every scrap of data you can, but keep your distance. Our priority is observation, non-interference. We're here to learn, not to disturb." The Manta, a sleek, needle-nosed scout craft detached from the Wayfinder's primary ventral bay, a tiny silver fish swimming towards a leviathan made of light. Alara watched its progress on the main screen, a knot forming in her stomach. This was it. Humanity's first true contact, not with a primitive world, but with something monumentally alien. Her hope was that their caution would be enough. The Manta glided silently, its sleek form almost invisible against the crystalline filigree of the Ethelgard. Inside, the scout craft was a hive of quiet activity. Dr. Eris Thorne had almost pressed his nose against the viewport, his eyes wide with awe, as he catalogued every facet of the megastructure. "The fractal complexity. It's almost organic," he whispered, more to himself than to the pilot, Lieutenant CMDR Reese Cato. "And the energy pulses, they're intensifying the closer we get. Not aggressively, but as if the structure itself is waking up." Suddenly, the Manta's internal lights flickered. Alarms blared, sharp and insistent. "Captain Vance, we're losing." "Sensor integrity," Reese shouted, wrestling with the controls. "Localized high-frequency burst, it's overwhelming everything." On the Wayfinder's bridge, Alara watched in horror as the Manta's transponder blipped out, replaced by a ghost image. "Reese? Eris? Report. What's happening?" Her voice was tight with urgency. Before anyone could answer, the Ethelgard underwent a horrifying transformation. Sections of its crystalline surface, previously dormant, glowed with an ominous internal light. Sleek, angular drones, previously invisible, detached from the structure's myriad facets, their forms utterly alien, their movements disturbingly fluid. They were weapons platforms, and they were orienting on the Wayfinder. "Incoming energy signatures, Captain," Zola yelled, her voice strained. "Multiple targets. They're active. They're targeting us." Jax Cale, now at the tactical station, slammed his fist on the console. "We're under attack. They've misinterpreted our approach." He spun to Alara. "Deflector shields to maximum. Initiate evasive pattern Delta 7. Get us out of here." Alara nodded grimly, her initial shock giving way to steely resolve. "Comms. Broadcast universal peace signals on all known frequencies. Visuals show our open bays, our empty weapon ports. Let them know we're not hostile." But the drones paid no heed. Their energy beams, emerald lances of raw power, lanced out, hammering against the Wayfinder's shields. The ship shuddered violently, klaxons screaming a chaotic symphony of alarm. "Shields at 70% and dropping," Zola reported, her fingers flying across her console. "Their energy output is immense, and they're not letting up." "Jax, any patterns, any vulnerabilities?" Alara demanded, the ship groaning around them. "None, Captain. Their design is completely unknown. They're faster than anything we've seen, and their targeting is unnervingly precise." Jax's voice was grim. "We need to break contact now." Alara watched the main view screen, her heart aching for the Manta. She had to make a choice: continue broadcasting peace signals to an enemy that clearly wasn't listening, or fight for the survival of her crew and ship. The Ethelguard, once a marvel, was now a harbinger of doom. It was clear their first contact had gone horribly, violently sideways. The Wayfinder bucked and roared like a caged beast, every evasive maneuver a desperate gamble against the relentless Silos drones. Jax Cale's commands were sharp, precise, pushing the ship to its absolute limits, but the sheer volume of incoming fire was overwhelming. "Shields at 40%, Captain." Zola's voice was laced with panic. "Hull integrity failing in sections. We're losing power to secondary systems." A direct hit to the aft deflector grid sent a jolt through the bridge, throwing Alara against her command chair's restraints. Sparks showered from overhead conduits. The air filled with the acrid smell of ozone. "They're bypassing our deflectors," Jax yelled, his face grim. "One more hit like that and we're crippled." Alara clenched her jaw. She could hear the frantic efforts of the damage control teams through the comms. They were bleeding power, bleeding time. Just as she was about to order a full retreat, a desperate, risky jump, a blinding emerald beam from one of the lead Silos drones struck the Wayfinder. It wasn't a direct hit on the primary systems, but a glancing blow that scraped along the ship's port side. The Wayfinder reeled, but instead of punching through their already weakened shields, the beam ricocheted. It glanced off the Wayfinder's hull with a sickening screech of tortured metal, and then, impossibly, struck the Ethelguard itself. The impact was minor, a mere flick against the titanic structure, but it was enough. A section of the crystalline megastructure, previously unnoticed and seemingly inert, shimmered erratically, then fractured. Lines of glowing energy raced across its surface, like cracks appearing in a stressed pane of ice. The Ethelguard pulsed, violently, an agonizing thrumming that reverberated through the Wayfinder's very core. The Silos drones, which had been pressing their attack with unwavering ferocity, suddenly faltered. A significant number of them, perhaps a third, simply winked out, their energy signatures dissipating into nothingness. The remaining drones hesitated, their targeting systems flickering as if uncertain. Then, from the newly fractured section of the Ethelguard, a faint, complex beacon activated. It wasn't a communication signal, not in the way humans understood it, but a resonant, high-frequency warning. "Captain, did you see that?" Jax demanded, his voice incredulous. "Our hit just disabled their attackers?" "And that beacon," Alara murmured, her eyes fixed on the shimmering fracture. It was a new anomaly, a fresh mystery. "It's different from their attack pulses." Suddenly, Dr. Eris Thorne's voice crackled over the comms, breathless, but filled with a new, urgent energy. "Captain, I'm back on the Manta. Reese managed to restore comms after that last energy burst. The beacon. It's not a distress call for help. It's a warning. A critical system is failing. The damage we just inflicted, it's accelerated. An internal collapse." Alara stared at the wounded Ethelgard. This wasn't an attack, it was a misinterpretation, a desperate, automatic defense of a profoundly vulnerable internal system. And now, that system was in freefall. "Jax," Alara said, her voice firm, "prepare a boarding party, minimum armament. Get Lara Volkov, our best engineer, on that team. Eris, you're the lead. Get to that beacon. We're going in." Jax stared at her, utterly aghast. "Captain, with all due respect, we're still under attack. Their drones could reactivate at any moment. We need to disengage, regroup, understand what just happened, not walk into the lion's den." "We're not walking into a lion's den, Jax," Alara countered, her gaze unwavering. "We just inadvertently hit a critical organ. That beacon, it's their dying gasp. If we don't act, if we don't try to help, we'll lose any chance of understanding them, and we'll be responsible for the destruction of an entire civilization. This isn't about fighting them anymore. This is about saving them. It's our only chance to turn this sideways contact right." A tense silence filled the bridge, broken only by the hum of the remaining systems. Jax, though unconvinced by the sheer audacity of the plan, saw the conviction in his captain's eyes. He nodded slowly. "Understood, Captain. Preparing the team." Alara watched the Ethelgard, a vast wounded entity now. The humans, once prey, were now contemplating being saviors. The irony wasn't lost on her, but the opportunity, the moral imperative, was too strong to ignore. The air inside the Ethelgard was cold, sterile, and faintly metallic, tasting of ozone and something indefinably ancient. Dr. Eris Thorne led the small boarding party, his hand resting instinctively on the holstered stunner at his hip, though he doubted it would be of much use here. Engineer Lara Volkov, her dark hair pulled back in a practical bun, moved with purpose, her toolkit slung over her shoulder. Reese Cato provided security, his pulse rifle held loosely, ready. They found the source of the distress beacon within, the fractured section of the crystal. It wasn't a chamber, but a vast, sprawling network of glowing conduits and pulsating nodes, all flowing towards a central nexus that was visibly failing. Energy arced wildly between components, and a low, mournful hum vibrated through the crystalline floor. There were no Silos individuals, no traditional aliens. Instead, the area was populated by a dozen or so constructs, sleek and vaguely insectoid, their forms woven from shimmering organic synthetic materials. These sentinels, as Eris quickly dubbed them, moved with an almost balletic grace, though their movements were now jerky, desperate. They were trying to contain the cascading failures, their multi-jointed limbs frantically attempting to reroute energy, but they were clearly overwhelmed. "They're caretakers," Eris murmured, observing their actions. "Like biological automata, and they're in distress. The energy pulses, they're much clearer here. They're not just warnings, they're pleas." Lyra, meanwhile, was already poring over the exposed systems, her brow furrowed in concentration. "This is incredible," she breathed, half in awe, half in professional frustration. "It's not just a power conduit, it's a nervous system. The energy flow isn't electrical, it's resonant, like a living organism." The sentinels, sensing their presence, paused, their multifaceted eyes like clusters of tiny gems turned towards the humans. They didn't display aggression, only a profound, silent anguish. They projected new patterns, complex visual sequences that pulsed on the crystalline walls around them, geometric shapes, shifting colors, resonant frequencies that vibrated deep in the human team's bones. "They're communicating," Eris declared excitedly, his mind racing. "Not with words, but with pure information. It's a conceptual language. Look, that sequence of rhomboids and the high-pitched hum, it means critical system failure. And that Series of interlocking circles with the low thrum. Primary consciousness at risk. Lyra was already working. They're using resonant frequency manipulation to transmit energy, she explained, pointing at a fractured crystal conduit. This whole section is meant to stabilize the larger structure, but its internal resonance is off. The problem isn't a power shortage, it's a harmonic dissonance. Can you fix it? Reese asked, his hand still on his weapon, wary of the strange sentinels. Fix it? I don't even know what normal looks like for this, Lyra admitted. But I can improvise. If I can reroute some of our own power, stabilize the resonant frequency, it might buy them time. We've got standard energy conduits, but the harmonic modulation will be the tricky part. We'll need a precise frequency generator. Eris, watching the sentinels' desperate, almost pleading gestures, had an idea. The silos, they're not physically present, are they? They are the Ethel Guard. Their consciousness, their very existence, is integrated into this structure. The sentinels are just extensions of it. He stepped closer to a sentinel, holding out his open palm in a gesture of peace. The sentinel mirrored his action, its intricate digits extending slightly. Eris began to hum, a deep, resonant tone, mimicking a stable frequency he'd observed in the healthy parts of the Ethel Guard during the Manta's initial scans. He then started tracing simple geometric patterns in the air with his free hand, hoping to convey the concept of help and stabilize. The sentinel's gem-like eyes pulsed and its complex pattern changed. It projected a sequence of rapidly shifting, vibrant colors, faster and more coherent than anything before. They're giving us diagnostic data, Eris exclaimed, eyes wide. They're showing us the exact resonant frequency needed. Lyra, can you adapt our power conduits to this? It's a direct input for the needed harmonic. Lyra rushed over, her face a mask of concentration. A direct input? That's brilliant. Risky, but brilliant. We'll need to tie directly into one of the Wayfinder's auxiliary power cells. It'll be a massive draw. The hum of the failing Ethel Guard grew louder, more frantic. The sentinel's movements became increasingly erratic. The sense of a living, dying entity was palpable. Humanity, with its crude, direct technology and its intuitive leap of compassion, was the only hope for an alien intelligence that existed as a song woven into crystal. Back on the Wayfinder, the situation remained tense. Captain Vance monitored the Ethel Guard's energy fluctuations with grim fascination. The remaining Silos drones were now completely inert, their energy signatures mirroring the failing structure, a chilling testament to the megastructure's profound vulnerability. Captain, the energy drain from the Ethel Guard is increasing, Zola reported, her voice hushed. It's like a black hole, sucking everything in. If we don't stabilize it soon, it's going to collapse completely. And then, whatever the Silos are, they're gone. Through the comms, Eris Thorne's voice was strained. Captain, the Sentinels are showing us projections of the full structural collapse. It's not just a system failure, it's an extinction event for them. Their entire consciousness, their history, their very being, is housed within the Ethel Guard. It's like a living library, and it's on fire. Ilara felt a cold knot in her stomach. They had inadvertently caused this, or rather, accelerated it. The initial attack, born of paranoia, had inadvertently led to this shared precipice. Lyra, Eris, what's your assessment? Can you fix it? Ilara asked, the question laced with urgency. We can stabilize it temporarily, Captain, Lyra responded. But it requires routing a significant portion of the Wayfinder's auxiliary power directly into the Ethel Guard. We're talking about a continuous high-energy shunt to maintain the harmonic frequency. It'll strain our own systems. We won't be able to jump to warp until the connection is severed, and if the Ethel Guard goes, it might take us with it. Jax Kale, who had been listening with a mixture of skepticism and grim acceptance, finally spoke. Captain, that's an unacceptable risk. We still don't fully understand these silos. We don't know what residual defenses might be active, what unforeseen consequences this might have on our ship. Our mission is exploration and return, not self-sacrifice for a species that just tried to obliterate us. Ilara turned to him, her gaze firm. Jax, look at it. Look at what's happening. She gestured to the main screen where the Ethel Guard was beginning to visibly dim in places, its once vibrant crystalline surface losing its luster. We have a chance to not just escape, but to understand, to prevent an extinction. Are we truly so different from them that we would let them die because of a misunderstanding? She turned back to the comms. Aris, can you convey this to them? Can you make them understand our intent? I'm trying, Captain, Aris replied, his voice filled with effort. They're projecting images of their history of long isolation, of the threat of unknown entities. They built this structure as a fortress, a sanctuary. They're terrified of outsiders. Our approach triggered an ancient, ingrained defense mechanism, but they're starting to differentiate. They're seeing our actions, our attempts to help. Then tell them, Alara commanded, her voice resonating with conviction. Tell them we extend a hand, not a weapon. Tell them we will use our power, our very ship, to stabilize their sanctuary. We will risk everything because that is what humanity does. We help. We build. We understand. Tell them this is a plea for cooperation, for shared survival. Jax, watching, Alara felt a subtle shift within himself. His tactical mind screamed against the sheer recklessness, but his human heart, though buried deep beneath layers of protocol, responded to her unwavering belief. He knew the risk was immense, but he also recognized the moral weight of their predicament. Captain, he said, his voice quiet, if we're going to do this, we'll need to maximize our own power output. I can reroute the primary shield generators, siphon off their residual energy. It'll leave us virtually defenseless, but it'll give Lyra the juice she needs. It's a calculated gamble, but it buys them more time and gives us a better chance of success. Alara nodded, a flicker of appreciation in her eyes. Do it, Jax. Let's show them what humanity is made of. The Wayfinder, already battered, began to hum with a new, deeper resonance as its core systems were pushed to their absolute limits. It was a desperate gamble, a testament to human empathy in the face of annihilation, not just for themselves, but for a species they barely understood. Within the failing heart of the Ethel Guard, the air crackled with desperate energy. Lyra Volkov worked with a feverish intensity, her hands flying across the improvised control panel she had rigged from Wayfinder schematics and Silos interfaces. The resonant frequency is fluctuating too rapidly, she called out, sweat beading on her brow. I need a stable input or this whole thing will just oscillate into oblivion. Suddenly, the sentinels surrounding them began to pulse with a new, urgent light. Their projections on the crystalline walls intensified, becoming incredibly detailed. Complex schematics, intricate energy pathways, and precise harmonic equations flashed before Eris Thorne's astonished eyes. Captain, they're communicating fully now, Eris shouted, his voice hoarse with excitement. They're giving us the precise diagnostic data. They understand. They're providing the harmonic stabilization algorithms. It's an open channel. On the Wayfinder's bridge, Alara watched as the main screen displayed the Silos' projections, translated in real time by Eris. It was overwhelming in its complexity, but the intent was clear. Cooperation. Jax, full power to auxiliary, Alara commanded, her voice ringing with renewed hope. Route everything Lyra needs. Zola, monitor their power output. Any fluctuations, you tell me immediately. Affirmative, Captain, Jax replied, his fingers dancing across the controls. The Wayfinder's engines whined in protest as power was diverted, the ship's internal lights dimming perceptibly. They were pouring their very lifeblood into the alien structure. Lyra, guided by the Silos' projected schematics, began to feed the Wayfinder's raw power into the Ethel Guard. The crystalline conduits within the megastructure flared with a new, consistent brilliance. The mournful hum of distress began to abate, replaced by a low, steady thrum of stabilization. It's working, Lyra yelled, a triumphant grin splitting her face. The harmonic resonance is stabilizing. Their internal systems are coming back online. The Sentinels, now moving with renewed vigor, began to actively assist the human team, their organic synthetic limbs deftly manipulating the crystalline components, guided by Lyra's improvised interface. It was a bizarre, almost symbiotic dance of human ingenuity and alien technology. They're showing us a history, Eris murmured, captivated by the evolving projections. A long history of galactic conflict, of species that rose and fell in violence. They chose isolation, retreated into this megastructure, evolving into a purely digital existence to escape the endless cycles of war. They believed it was the only way to survive. Our unexpected arrival, it triggered their deepest fears. Truth was a sobering realization. The silos weren't inherently malicious, just profoundly traumatized and paranoid. Their defenses were not an act of aggression, but a desperate, ingrained reflex of self-preservation. And humanity, in its initial, well-intentioned but misunderstood exploration, had stumbled upon their most vulnerable point. As the energy flow from the Wayfinder continued, the Ethelgard visibly brightened. The dullness receded, replaced by the original vibrant luminosity. The low, ominous hum was gone, replaced by a steady, comforting thrum that resonated with life. "Primary system stable, Captain." Lyra's voice echoed through the comms, exhaustion and elation battling for dominance. "We've done it. The Ethelgard is stable." On the Wayfinder's bridge, a cheer erupted, raw and heartfelt. Ilara closed her eyes for a moment, a wave of relief washing over her. They had faced overwhelming odds, a hostile first contact, and through an act of sheer, stubborn human compassion and ingenuity, they had turned it around. The Ethelgard, restored to its former glory, hummed with renewed life, a beacon of crystalline brilliance against the dark canvas of space. The Wayfinder, battered but triumphant, remained linked, a lifeline providing the stable energy needed for long-term recovery. Within the megastructure, the Sentinels, now moving with a graceful efficiency, projected a final, complex pattern. It was a story, conveyed through resonant frequencies and intricate visual narratives. The tale of the Silas's retreat into the Ethelgard, their self-imposed isolation to preserve their consciousness from a galaxy they perceived as endlessly hostile. It spoke of fear, of survival, and now of a profound, unspoken gratitude. "They're showing us how their digital consciousness intertwines with the structure," Eris explained, his voice filled with awe. "It's a living, breathing network, and they're thanking us. They're showing us a map of their knowledge, a pathway to their vast archives. They're offering us access." Captain Ilara Vance stood on the Wayfinder's bridge, watching the Ethelgard's serene glow. The battle scars on her own ship were stark reminders of how close they had come to disaster, how easily this could have ended in mutual destruction. Instead, they had found connection. "Captain," Jax Cale said, standing beside her, his initial skepticism replaced by a quiet respect. "That was remarkable. We saved them, after they tried to blow us out of the sky." Ilara smiled faintly. "Sometimes, Jax, the greatest victories aren't won with weapons but with compassion and a little bit of stubbornness." Lyra Volkov, back on the Wayfinder, looked utterly spent but exhilarated. "The temporary patch will hold, Captain, but the Ethelgard will need extensive long-term repairs. Their Sentinels have enough autonomy to manage, but it's a long road back for them. And we've given them a start," Ilara said. "We've shown them that not all unknowns are hostile, that some hands, even those that appear menacing, are extended in peace." Eris Thorne, his face alight with intellectual fervor, was already deep in conversation with a silo Sentinel construct, attempting to establish more robust communication protocols for future study. The scientific implications of the Silos' existence, their unique form of life, were staggering. Humanity had just opened a door to a completely new understanding of consciousness and survival. As the Wayfinder slowly began to disengage from the Ethelgard, its auxiliary power restored, the Silos projected a final brilliant burst of resonant energy. It wasn't a message of farewell, but of acknowledgement, an unspoken accord. Ilara took one last look at the crystalline Leviathan, now a silent testament to a conflict averted and a bond forged. Humanity had come to an uncharted system, stumbled into a near-fatal misunderstanding, and emerged not as conquerors or victims, but as saviors. They had proven that even in the cold, vast emptiness of space, the warmth of empathy and the courage to extend a hand could bridge the widest chasm. The Wayfinder, battered but proud, turned its bow towards home. The stars, once distant and indifferent, now seemed to hold endless possibilities, and humanity, for the first time, truly understood its place among them, not just as explorers, but as architects of connection.